Welcome to the webinar. We have people in 3 different time zones around the world, and so some of us are getting up early and others of us are staying up late. But we are very glad that you've joined us today for this presentation. We are going to be discussing how this new technology is fundamentally changing the world from various perspectives. My name is Jonathan Bench. I am an attorney at Harris Bricken, located in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm an international transactional attorney, and my practice centers around doing international transactions across borders. So I'm often helping parties in different countries do manufacturing, but on the technology side, I do licensing contracts. And in the last 18 months, I've started representing more and more companies that are doing something on the blockchain. I have a range of clients from NFT providers, NFT creators, NFT studios, some notable influencers, also some companies that are building tools for Web3 companies, and also some DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, with people in far-flung jurisdictions and countries like Indonesia, Europe, US, Caribbean. And so I'll be speaking in a little bit about my practice there and about how I'm seeing blockchain applied to various types of industries. Next, I'm going to send it over to Ro Feng and Andrew Lin, who are in Taiwan, for them to introduce themselves, and then we'll proceed from there.
Thank you, Jonathan. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ro Feng, and our counsel, Andrew Lin. I'm the co-managing partner of zoning law firm in Taiwan, and I specialize in transactional practice and also the commercial dispute resolutions. But among others, specifically, I'm very interested in a lot to go focus on innovative technology fields such like blockchain, NFT, crypto transactions, and all that. Andrew, our counsel, brings a wealth of knowledge and experience from his deep involvement in blockchain and Web3 fields, not only from a legal perspective, but also an investment and entrepreneurship perspective in recent years. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Daniel Roquevitolo. I am the main partner of Vitolo Abogados, a law firm established in Argentina. I have been a member of the IBLC for more than 20 years, and we give different and provide different legal services in the field of corporate law, insolvency law, and litigation in Argentina, Latin America. And as a member of the IBLC, we have a lot of correspondent law firms all over the world.
And Daniel, before you go into your presentation, let me say for 1 minute that everyone who is on this call, please feel free to ask questions in the chat window, and we will address them as we go through. We'll save some time for question and answers at the end. But if you have any burning question that fits with a panelist, I'll keep an eye on that, and we can field those questions as they come in. I know we're talking about pretty interesting things, and there may be something on your mind that you want to talk about sooner rather than later. But Daniel, feel free to go ahead and start your presentation, and we'll keep an eye on the Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much. Are you looking at the screen with the presentation, or yes. I need to? Okay. Well, good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this webinar organized by the IBLC to disseminate some thoughts on the new technologies that are impacting the business world, and especially in the creation and control of companies. In particular, I would like to thank Jonathan Bench and Ro Feng for sharing this webinar, and Dennis and Kristen Campbell with the IBLC for chairing this organization. One of the concepts and elements that had burst in this time of post-modernity is that of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is transforming the way we live, the way we learn, and the way we work. Until recently, artificial intelligence used to be a fanciful concept more associated with science fiction than anything else. However, driven by unprecedented advances in sophisticated information and communication technologies, artificial intelligence is now synonymous with the technological progress already achieved and the progress yet to come in all spheres of our lives. Considering that machine learning and artificial intelligence are good to reach unforeseen levels of accuracy and efficiency, the combination of the expansion of information and communication technologies driven and identifiable capabilities in our socioeconomic systems, together with the growing expectations of consumers regarding technology and its added value for our societies, requires multidisciplinary research and a specific agenda. As we know, artificial intelligence is the combination of algorithms designed to create machines with the same cognitive capabilities as human beings. Artificial intelligence is a technology that still seems to be apparently distant and mysterious to us, but which has been present in our daily lives for several years and at all times. Artificial intelligence is present in the facial detection of cell phones, in virtual voice assistants such as Apple's Siri, Amazon's Alexa, or Microsoft's Cortana, and is integrated into our daily lives through robots or application for mobile devices such as Lily, a personal shopper in digital version, Parla, an application conceived as a language learning aid similar to Duolingo, EMS designed for the task of finding a new place to live or to develop an activity, Giant, a Facebook virtual assistant that issues medical diagnosis, or the well-known and famous Waze and Google Map that guide us on the roads. The goal of all these artificial intelligence applications is to make people's lives easier. Artificial intelligence is the science and engineering that makes it possible to design and program computers in such a way that they can perform tasks that require intelligence. These are systems that manifest intelligent behavior, analyze their environment, and take action with a certain degree of autonomy to achieve specific objectives. A combination of technologies that bring together data, algorithms, and computing capacity, emulating the intelligence mechanism of humans. We are talking about intelligent machines that work with training systems for continuous learning that they provide themselves. Within the various artificial intelligence systems, we can find systems that think that like humans, which makes the machine think like a human mind and can make decisions, solve problems, and also those computer machines can learn. But there are also systems that not only think, but act like humans and perform functions that require intelligent processes such as driving a vehicle, commanding a ship, flying a plane, or driving a missile. Additionally, there are also systems that think rationally and can develop calculation mechanisms that allow them to perceive sensations and receive information from the context. And there are even systems that act rationally and can design their own agents. Advances in artificial intelligence are already driving the use of big data due to its ability to process huge amounts of data and provide communication advantages. Artificial intelligence can be of great use in designing the content of the contracts or bylaws of private legal entities. And this does not present any objections, since it falls within the scope of the free autonomy of well protected by law. Nevertheless, this issue is questioned by some people about the possibility of using artificial intelligence mechanisms for the creation, registration, governance, and legality control of corporations. And on this, I would like to reflect briefly this afternoon. What happens is that we are facing a new global scenario where countries, communities, markets, political and social institutions are being redefined. New economics and financial tools are appearing in the world, such as cryptocurrencies. New social actors are also appearing, such as influencers or those who have prominence and popularity in virtual platforms and social media as Instagram or TikTok, and the expectations of all the world's inhabitants have changed too, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, where there is a global rethinking about how we want to live, how we want to work, how we want to develop and live with each other. And this has a very big impact in the field of corporations and companies. There can be no doubt today in the 21st century that the creation of new companies, the designs of bylaws, contracts, and operating rules, and also the handling of organization and management of a public registry for companies where the register office only fulfills the function of publicity, registration, keeping records, and conservation of documents today in a digital way can be more than efficiently fulfilled by an artificial intelligence. An artificial intelligence could perfectly determine if there were legal or fiscal mismatches in the omission of compliance with the rules enforced, and can do it at a speed far superior to that of any human organization. Just remember AlphaGo Zero, a program designed by Google DeepMind to play Go, the millenary Chinese game, 500 times more difficult than chess. AlphaGo Zero was the first computer that was not given the human guidelines for the game, but only abstract concepts linked to the functioning of the board. Using random moves, it learned to play through its own trial and mistake mechanisms in games developed against itself. After 40 days and more than 30 million games played, it was able to beat AlphaGo Master, another artificial intelligence that had learned from the moves of human players and that no professional had managed to beat. Is this not more difficult than designing bylaws or contracts for a company, or auditing whether or not the instrument that the public office receives complies with legal and fiscal requirements, or assessing whether the content of an instrument does not comply with a special law, or being able to classify, order, and register documents, keeping them in a digital forms? Of course it's not. If you are concerned about what an artificial intelligence can do or design, it will be enough to provide a system with some recourse before human or live, quote-unquote, body, the Chamber of Appeals, competent administrative entity, or others, to be able to appeal the decisions of the telematic artificial intelligence office to warranty the constitutional standards. However, we must be realistic and recognize that there are still some aspects or issues that we must resolve before launching into the massive use of artificial intelligence in these cases, especially with regard to the possibility that artificial intelligence can integrate the boards of directors in private companies or participate as investors in them. In the slide you are looking at, you will find some of the still controversial aspects regarding the use of artificial intelligence in private companies. Among them are the distrust generated by the possible autonomy of decision that an artificial intelligence may have, the imputation of responsibility for their behavior, and the economic responsibility in case of the production of damages to the company and third parties, the protection of confidential information and sensitive data, and even the possibility of recognizing rights to robots, which may also provoke discussions on gender issues. But since the time we have for this meeting is limited, these will be topics that we will address possible in the future webinar. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to meet you again in a new webinar in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. We'll send it over to Taiwan. We can get the controls switched over. We'll let Roque and Andrew tell us what they're seeing on their side of the Pacific Ocean.
So, can you see my screen?
We can see your screen and the video, so click on the little caret below show screen and then choose to just share. So this little right below the pause button there. So just click on that to share only the program that you want us to see rather than your whole screen. So over to the left, right by the pause button.
Okay.
Right there, and then just choose PowerPoint or whichever you're. Yep, that'll be perfect.
Okay.
And then to minimize the controls, you can click on that red arrow at the top. The orange red arrow right there. It'll move it over to the side.
You guys want it?
Yeah, that's okay. You should be able to move that over to the side now. Okay, we can see your PowerPoint now.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Andrew and I were going to talk a little bit on Taiwan side. We're focusing on smart contract and digital revolutions. And as you all know, smart contract is a key tools and powerful technology making the blockchain, Web3, and all that transactions possible. And today, sorry, a minute. Can you see my next page?
I see your slides all together.
Right.
So maybe if you can go full screen with that.
Sorry, 1 minute.
It's okay. If it's not going to go full screen for you, we can still see the smaller version of it. That's fine.
Sure. Is it better now?
Yeah, that's bigger now. We can see that.
Okay. Sorry for the hiccup. So we're going to have 4 parts for today's presentation. First one, I will do a little introduction of what happened in Taiwan, especially from the regulatory landscape and what markets is going on here. And second, Andrew will continue to introduce smart contracting. And then it's 2023, so everybody is talking about how smart contract can help us, help the industry, and questioning on whether smart contract or blockchain and other digital technology will replace us being a lawyer. And then conclusion with a couple of takeaways. Okay, first part. Let me quickly walk you through what happened here in Taiwan. All right, so let's talk about Taiwan's regulatory landscape toward blockchain and smart contract technology. The Taiwanese government has been very supportive of the technology, making blockchain one of its key focus in the innovation developments since 2018. Specifically, in 2022, MODA, a newborn ministry, we call it Ministry of Digital Affairs, was established. And you can tell from its name, the main goal of this agency is to promote the development of the Web3 and blockchain applications. As for the virtual assets, everybody cares this part the most. Taiwan used to be a very crypto-friendly market. Why I say used to be? Because climate has been changing a little bit here. I will share more on that. Although there are still no special laws governing the virtual assets service providers for crypto transactions, in 2020, Taiwanese government officially established the STO system and incorporated it into the financial regulatory regime and capital market system. But I will say it's only a landmark, regulatory landmark, because as of today, there's still no successful case on STO, but it's a good start. We also have financial regulatory sandbox, which helps facilitate the technology, such as like blockchains, crypto-related technology, Web3, and all kinds of smart contract application into the legacy financial industry. And something is going on here in the sandbox, and we already see some small success. So I believe we'll continue going on. From AML perspective, that's also a very essential part of the blockchain and the crypto industry. The local VASPs also need to complete AML registration with the FSC, the financial regulator in Taiwan, so that they can start their business here. Right now, nearly 30 companies in Taiwan have completed the registrations. So in Taiwan, from crypto perspective, there is no special licensing requirement, but you need to do an AML registrations. And if you want to go something further, like working with the financial institutions or have some official financial products into the market, you can choose STO or try the sandbox, or you can partner with the traditional financial institutions here. Well, a couple minutes ago, I said we used to be a very crypto-friendly market, but the climate changed a little bit recently. Taiwanese prosecutor recently initiated a criminal investigation against a well-known investor in Taiwan for alleged violation of banking regulations. A lot of debates going on, whether it's a correct and smart move from the perspective, from the prosecutor. Well, this actions, and together with the FTX drama, has led to the discussion about the FSC, the financial regulator, potentially increasing its regulatory measures. So after that, from the industry perspective, we hope that climate will change to back to more crypto and blockchain friendly, like the old days. Other than the regulatory landscape, a lot of market developments and applications also has been going on in Taiwan and worldwide. Next, Andrew will introduce you more on that part.
So I'll kind of go over some of the smart contracts in the real world, real use applications of smart contracts with blockchain technology. So basically, smart contracts are the key components of blockchain-based ecosystems. And many application-focused blockchains such as Ethereum. So digital contracts are trustless, autonomous, decentralized, and transparent, and usually irreversible and unmodifiable once deployed. So the advantage of having these smart contracts are removing or reducing the need for intermediaries or contract enforcement that typically takes place in the real world right now, whether it be lawyers or brokers or agents or court systems. So the potential of efficiency and is there for these smart contracts. So within the smart contracts, there are categories that are applicable or used right now. The first being DeFi, decentralized finance. Basically, this provides parallel services to the banking and financial industries for things that you typically know as interest-bearing accounts, loans, financing. DeFi allows no need for centralized custody or fees from intermediaries. So things can become more efficient, not needing to get approval from banks for loans or submitting paperwork for financing. Everything just happens quickly and efficiently on chain. The next would be dApps, apps that are decentralized. Within this, right now, you have things such as finance, which I discussed with DeFi, gaming, exchanges. So basically, dApps are applications that run on top of blockchain networks. So there are things such as wallets that manage blockchain addresses, keys to identify and authenticate yourself. And then for gaming, you have developers who make and release games, gaming being such a huge industry right now in the markets, trading assets within games, exchanges for dApps such as trading cryptocurrency, trading NFTs, just like, you know, in your typical, in the real world where you have things like, you know, trading stocks or marketplaces like eBay where you sell things. The next category that would be NFTs. So NFTs are non-fungible tokens, and they're digital assets. So non-fungible tokens could be in the form of arts or collectibles or real estate. Or kind of more practical applications right now are some, for example, ticketing experiences such as concerts or sports games or things like that. Instead of using paper tickets, some of these venues have been using NFTs as a way of identifying your purchase your ticket and authenticating that it's a valid ticket. NFTs allow for clear ownership and traceability. So you have, in the real world, you have issues with, for example, fine art, tracing provenance, tracing authenticity. With NFTs, everything is immutable on the blockchain, so everything is very clear and traceable. The next category would be smart contract usage would be in real life, could be legal contracts. Legal contracts would be legally binding, as in the real world. You already see the shift right now with the technology and using e-signatures for a lot of contracts, and more so you start getting adoption of legal contracts on chain with smart contracts. So already in the United States, it's permitted in Arizona and enforceable by legal courts. I believe California allows marriage licenses to be in smart contracts to apply to the legal contracts for marriage licenses. The next category would be that can be used would be real estate, tokenization of real estate purchases, fractional ownership. So say you want to own a piece of property or land with a group of friends or some group of people to split the purchase. A lot of this can be tokenized on chain using smart contracts. So it's clear who owns what, at what price, at cost. So a lot of the hidden costs that are included in real life right now when you transact real estate, such as closing fees, title transfer, broker fees, a lot of these things can be eliminated with using smart contracts on the blockchain to tokenize real estate transactions. Another segment that could be used are corporate structures using decentralized autonomous organizations. So a lot of these structures are being used right now using smart contracts where you can incorporate and manage your corporate structure, as in the DAOs, using blockchain and smart contracts to signify ownership and compensation of entities. And then the last utilization right now would be emerging technology with AI, which Daniel brought up earlier, and smart contracts to power AI powered by smart contracts. So you start seeing a lot of utilization of this in the real world as well. So the last part, part 3, that we would bring up is smart contracts versus lawyers. So a lot of this sounds great, it sounds very efficient, but then what are the disadvantages if there are any? So there still are disadvantages in that although it is irrevocable, irreversible smart contracts once they're deployed, it therefore makes it very difficult to change. So with lawyers these days or transactions, perhaps you can make amendments, you can make changes to the contract, but when it is on chain as a smart contract, it becomes very difficult to reverse or amend a smart contract because it is basically irreversible once it's deployed on chain. You have issues that potentially error in the code of the smart contract or hacking of the smart contract that would cause issues with the transaction or the agreements. Terms would still have to, terms at this point would be fairly vague because what you use as code in the smart contract would have to be able to be programmed in code. So not all terms in a typical legal agreement could necessarily be utilized or programmed in a smart contract. And even though it makes things more efficient, you essentially at this point still need some third parties, such as developers to create the smart contract, developers to create the code, And lawyers still need to be involved in terms of checking the smart contract to make sure that the terms are applicable to the transaction, and it brings in the kind of question whether lawyers understand the code that is being involved in smart contracts. So that's real life applications of smart contracts right now, the revolution that is taking place, and the efficiencies and advantages and disadvantages that are happening right now versus what's existing in the legal world at this moment.
Thanks, Roque and Andrew. That was excellent. I'll pull up my slides in a second as soon as I get control. It's interesting, though, thinking about, as lawyers, of course, the three of us or four of us here are lawyers on the screen. And so it's always interesting to ponder. And I think all of us, even with ChatGPT coming out the last, I mean, even just the last 2 weeks, I would say, everyone's considering, well, I'm going to go on, like I went on and asked ChatGPT to help me write a contract just to see what would happen. And I loved, it's very fun to interact with AI. It's fun to see the applications of blockchain to contracts. And certainly I think those of us who want to survive in our careers in the next 20 or 30 years know that we have to embrace technology. So let me see if I can get my screen share up here, and then I can, and then I'll be able to, although the controls of course are looking differently than when we did it before. So let me see if I kill my camera for a second. You can see my, can one of you let me know if you can see my slides now?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So I always like to think of blockchain and Web3 in terms of what problems are trying to be solved. The entrepreneurs that I work with and the people I read, you know, the technology in blockchain is very very egalitarian, I would say, and it wants to produce a good for the world. A lot of the technologists that I know, a lot of the people who I've been talking to are very, you know, they want to do good things for the world. They want to redistribute capital. They want people to have a fair say in what happens in organizations. And so I tend to think of, you know, when I talk to entrepreneurs, they reach out and say, you know, I read a blog post you saw, or a friend recommended me to you. I try to ask them, why do you need Web3? You know, why do you need blockchain in your business? Do you really need it? And so I try to think of, I break them what their business model is down in terms of what, you know, what their business is doing. If we remove Web3 entirely from the conversation, and then we put it back in. And I think some of the most compelling use cases I've seen, because my part of this presentation is really, you know, blockchain applications in every industry, every business industry. Because in the last 18 months, as I've been representing more and more clients and thinking about this very critically and understanding how the legal maps over onto the technology, it's been hard for me to find an industry that blockchain has not been helpful or will not be helpful to. So certainly when we're looking at you know, the democratic aspects of this in saying we're not going to have centralized structures anymore, we're going to have what we call decentralized structures. We're going to lower barriers to investment. We're going to make it easier for people to participate in the global economy, because technology, you know, everyone with a smartphone in their hand around the world can really participate in, you know, in business and in blockchain in various ways. You know, minimizing intermediaries. I think that this is fundamentally what a lot of technology entrepreneurs want to do. They feel like, if I could just make a program, make some code that will help things happen easier. And I think that's fundamentally what technology has been doing all along. Looking at how we can reward contributors more directly is also a very interesting thing, and I've got a slide later on that. The aspects of having you know, ultimate transparency and immutability, meaning that it can't be changed. You know, once, as Andrew was just saying, once a smart contract is out, is up on a blockchain, it is immutable. It can't be changed. It can be changed, they'll tell you it can be changed, but it's very difficult. I had an entrepreneur who I saw on LinkedIn just last week who was saying all they wanted to do was rebrand their company, and in order to rebrand their company, they had to go and redo the whole smart contract, and he found that extremely frustrating because in a Web 2 context, that's very easy to do. You just make some amendments with the state, you update your website, any other customer-facing things, and then you're good. But if your company and a big part of your business model is on chain, changing small things is very difficult, and that's hard when you think about the kinds of pivots that you're making when you're in a startup, when you're in a startup scenario. More liquidity in the hands of people, and I think a lot of I would say the blockchain traditional, we call it in Bitcoin, you call it the Bitcoin maxis. So I would say the blockchain maxis, they're really into having as little regulation as possible. Less regulation means more free flowing capital, means less censorship, and so we'll find a lot of different viewpoints from people. We can share these slides as well, but you feel free to, and we'll put this video up on our YouTube channel as well. So feel free to look at these. But I have two slides that really look at how's blockchain impacting different industries, whether you represent a company that's doing something in finance or healthcare or real estate or energy. I mean, there's so many things, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a business manager, supply chain, whether you're dealing heavy in IP, whether you're in more traditional financing as well. There are aspects to this. If you're a company or you represent a company with a traditional retail company or companies that do international trade, every company has human resources. Entertainment has been a very big area, of course, and I'll talk about that in terms of the metaverse. Even to agriculture and then government. If we think about a lot of the for-profit applications that are being used in Web3, and a lot of them can cross over and help government as well. And honestly, a lot of good projects have come out of let's make government more transparent and more efficient. So just focusing on a few of these aspects in a little more depth, I'd say that 95% of the blockchain companies that I interact with, that I represent, or that I talk to on a weekly basis are really trying to solve the question of how do we raise capital in this environment. We've heard there have been more than one crypto boom and crypto crash in the last 12 years. And so everyone's asking, and the companies that survived the crypto winter, I'd say all of 2022 can be described as the crypto winter, and a lot of companies are starting to come out of this. And what I've seen in my practice is the fraudsters, all of the people who were just there to try to make cut and paste the code, put it out there, pump the coin, your traditional pump and dump in the securities industry. That has largely gone away. I wouldn't say it's gone away, it's just gotten quieter. Some of them have just run off and taken their money. Some of them have said, there's no more money to be made. We made money while we could. And the companies that remain and the developers and the entrepreneurs that remain in the blockchain space tend to have a lot of experience. They're entrepreneurs from other industries. They usually have capital and they have good ideas. And so they're still building. They've been building through the crypto winter. They're still building. I would say I've gotten more calls in the last 3 months asking about legal services representing blockchain companies than I did in the first 9 months of last year. And I think that's because a lot of the companies in the US are looking at what the SEC has been doing and trying to decide how, whether their business model fits, whether they're legal. And so I have a lot of these questions. Some of the key questions that come up when companies blockchain companies talk to me is they say, well, we're issuing a token, and almost every company is going to issue a token. And so I have to help them decide, is their token more of a security token or utility token? And for those of you who are familiar with the blockchain space, know that there are well over a dozen, probably 20 different types of tokens that are being bantered about. But in my mind, really, it just narrows. There are only two. There's is it a security token or utility token? That's the fundamental question, and that's going to matter from where I sit as the lawyer. Then the next question, after figuring out what type of token is the project going to issue, then where do we put the various parts of the business? We're going to have probably, typically there's no entity registered yet, so we're going to have, I'll help them figure out where we're going to have an entity, in which jurisdiction in the world. Are we going to have the smart contract owned and operated by one entity, and then the business operations in another? And then after that, we'll figure out, is there a regulatory regime? And VASP stands for Virtual Asset Service Provider Regulation. So there are some jurisdictions in the world that have VASP registration and others that don't. And this is kind of the big umbrella term for, as Roke and Andrew talked about in Taiwan, this is the kind of regulation that governs blockchain companies. Are you the kind of company that needs to be licensed, that can be licensed? Is there government oversight in space? And so it's very important to figure that out. And often we'll pick a jurisdiction either that is friendly to crypto, or that doesn't care about crypto, or that hasn't given it any thought yet, doesn't have any legislation. And then issuing tokens, we'll have to look at whether if there's a security token that's being issued, then how does that registration process take place to make sure that the project remains compliant? As I tell my entrepreneurs, my goal is to keep you out of jail. And when you start raising money from people, if there's no business model, and typically if there's no good disclosures behind it, then people can go to jail. And typically the executive team, the founding team, are the ones who are going to be most at risk. When we're looking at securities themselves, and securitization is kind of a big word, and it encompasses a couple of different things. So one is as collateral. And those of you who are in the U.S., other nations not so much. They don't have a kind of a central registry like we do. That more goes through the courts. But in the United States, we have what's called a UCC registry, and that's where any creditor, anyone with a security interest in an asset can go and register. And of course, we're so early with this in the United States that if someone has like I had this in my first bullet point, NFTs as collateral. So if someone has a bundle of NFTs and they want to get a loan, they want to use the NFTs as collateral, then in the United States, the lender can go to the UCC, and this is all done online, can go to the UCC website and file the security interest, and then they have the security interest in the NFTs. NFT bundle has become collateral. Now, executing on that, if there's a default, that is a much more difficult thing that courts continue to wrestle with, but it is certainly a viable means. And NFTs and any other digital asset can be used as security in any type of transaction. When we look at tokenization, a lot of business models are using this. I would say the most recent that I talked to some entrepreneurs about last week was a warehouse, and the traditional warehouse with shipping containers in it, and the company wanted to tokenize those containers, wanted to turn those containers, which are physical assets, into tokenized interests. And so and I hadn't worked through the whole business model with them yet, but it's indicative of the kinds of things. Any asset, especially any physical real world asset, it's very popular to think about on real estate. And then anything else, really, any finance guru can think about creating a financial product that is built on a physical asset. So very interesting applications there. Supply chain sourcing is very interesting because the blockchain is immutable. There are a lot of uses for blockchain and supply chain integrity, and by that I mean from if we're taking the agricultural context, an agricultural crop grown anywhere in the world can have data inputs. Sensors put in the soil can test how much sunlight there is, and then from seed all the way to sale, any of that information that a consumer or a lender would be interested in can be put on chain, and all the data can be read, can be viewed anytime, and it's immutable, meaning it can't be changed once it's there. And so that can give downstream consumers and lenders and other parties involved a lot of certainty, which is, we know certainty is a good thing for business, and especially in the international context, certainty is excellent. is supply chain. The other part of supply chain is digital payments. When we have a typical transaction, and my third bullet point talks about passport documents. So every international transaction has a series of documents. We have a certificate of authenticity. We have where it was manufactured. We have companies that review the quality of the goods and verify that the number of goods and the quality of goods is accurate. And so we call those passport documents in international supply chain transactions. And so typically you have the lender in the middle that's financing this, and everyone. It's actually quite a trustless environment, and that's a blockchain term. But it would be more trustless, and it is getting more trustless when we can automate some of these pieces of the transaction with smart contract infrastructure, so that when certain documents are uploaded and verified, then those payments can flow more quickly, and that efficiency will only help the global supply chain sourcing industry. Human resources is a very interesting place. I've learned the most about human resources, and I'm a transactional lawyer. I'm not an employment lawyer, but I often deal in matters of executive compensation. And if we're looking at decentralized autonomous organizations, so these DAOs, I've learned the most about executive compensation and about general compensation in the context of DAOs. And so when we're looking at how is a group, and DAO, when we have a DAO, it could be just a few people, but typically it's dozens or hundreds of people together in a global organization, and kind of this new digital global organization. And there's often a pool of capital because they may have issued a token, and they're trying to build something together. And everyone has to decide what needs to be done. So we have the punch list of things that need to be done for the DAO. And then we have a list of what they call the bounties, right? So you can have a list of things. This is the to-do list for the group. These are the bounties that are available if you do it, and that can be automated on smart contract. And so in these groups, you have transparent rewards. You have crowdsourced rewards where people, the members of the DAO can vote on who contributed the most, or how should the funds be allocated in that month. And you have the buy-in from everyone, which in a typical top-down hierarchical organization, a lot of these things, you're not going to see transparent salaries usually. You're not going to have input from colleagues on who is providing value. And so it's a very interesting way to turn the human resources and compensation on its head. Entertainment has been super interesting. Of course, I think that especially musicians, I would say, were some of the first to get into Web3. They already have strong brands. NFTs were really kind of the more easily understood version of blockchain to certain industries. Tokenization, people who have good finance backgrounds understand tokenization, and they're the ones who are looking at exchange platforms, building those. But for kind of lay people who aren't specialized in finance, I would say that entertainment and gaming were really the next two primary industries that were affected by blockchain in the last few years. And entertainment industry is very interesting. You read almost every day about a new artist that has decided they're going to issue NFTs, or they're going to issue a new song or a new album as an NFT, or they're going to tokenize the interest, the revenue payments, the revenue streams from that, or they're going to let their fans own their IP with them, co-own some of the IP. And in that scenario, then you can even establish through smart contracts royalty payments that flow down to crowd-funded music projects or crowd-funded other entertainer projects. So that's very interesting. I think pretty easily understandable by people who are not inherently technical. So the metaverse has been super interesting. I think you have a place like Sotheby's that will have a virtual art auction. You have Justin Bieber having, and I think one of the panelists, I can hear a little feedback, so maybe you can mute yourself. Getting Justin Bieber having a concert in the metaverse, and having people come and they can click to send him love, and then these virtual hearts flow to his character during the concert. So some really interesting interactions there. And then you have kind of this real estate where you can have, even though it's a virtual world, you can have proximity to each other in kind of a Minecraft type environment. So very interesting to see the connections that happen in the metaverse. And I think we're still early, even though Facebook rebranded to Meta last year, the year before, I think we're still very early in that space. For my last couple of minutes, and then we'll go to Q&A, I just want to look at one case study that kind of overlaps several of these elements. So last year, I talked to an entrepreneur from Costa Rica who had some family property. It was property where his father's family had been ranchers for years. Beautiful area, there was some coastal, there was a coastal area plus some wetlands, and then it went up to this gorgeous island. And so he said, well, we want to develop this. I want people to come and enjoy this, but I also want it to be a for-profit project. So we had there was a for-profit piece to this and a nonprofit piece. For-profit was, we're going to put high-end condominiums up on the hill because it has the best view. So high-end condominiums up there. Then in the lowlands, we had a preserve, really needed to be a nature preserve because of a rare species of bird that would migrate there each year. And so he said, well, we need to preserve this area, up on the hill, for profit. Down in the lowlands, we need some kind of nonprofit thing. But they wanted to be able to have university researchers come, maybe university students, maybe families come to help to kind of observe nature, but also to participate, to keep the land clean, to be able to clean the beach. And then they had beach, and they were going to have some kind of lower end cabanas down on the beach. And so we talked through a lot of the issues of, well, how do we take what could be a traditional real estate development project and move it on chain, or which aspects of blockchain would be used to really make this project thrive even better, to open this up to a bigger pool of donors for the nonprofit side, a bigger pool of investors, bigger pool of folks who would come, bring their families on vacation to this kind of place. So a lot of different potential uses for the property, a lot of different avenues for how we could get money to the project. And so we talked about NFTs, and maybe we can use these tropical birds and create a unique batch of NFTs, and then what kinds of benefits would tie to those NFTs. So we talked about that for quite a while. And then on the capital side is, do we issue tokens to the for-profit purchasers? Do we issue tokens to the nonprofit donors? Do we how can we raise capital in Costa Rica? Are we going to raise capital in Costa Rica? Are we going to raise capital in the US? And what kinds of potential investor pools do we have access to? And then, of course, what kinds of regulations do we have to comply with, from a real estate development standpoint, all the way through to raising capital in Costa Rica and in the US. So a lot of questions, a lot of potential applications. But as I said earlier, I think my takeaway from all these conversations I've had in the many hours I've spent learning and understanding the industry better is there are so many ways for this technology to be applied across so many industries that every company should really be looking at how blockchain matters to them and whether it does. I don't think it matters to every company, but certainly we go back to Daniel's AI. Between AI and blockchain, I think that every company has to understand their current business model, where they're headed in the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years, and how this technology might apply to their industry. So I'm going to turn off my stop screen sharing. We'll go back to just video, and we can do Q&A. I haven't, since I'm the last presenter, I have not looked at our Q&A to see if we had any questions come in yet. Daniel, maybe I can ask you, I know we had a couple of questions that came in before we started, and one of them was, how is Microsoft's ownership of ChatGPT going to play into the landscape? So, I mean, Google, Microsoft, in China, we have Baidu. There are a lot of big technology companies that are embracing AI. So how do you see this embrace, this kind of joint ventures and large amounts of capital being dumped into AI? How do you see that going to change the business landscape?
The business landscape is going to change dramatically because this is a new technology, but it's not only a new technology, it's a new way of doing business. It's a different way of relationship between entrepreneurs, financial institutions, governments, people. So I think that nobody knows what is going to happen in the next 5 or 7 years. I'm sure that if we convoke a new webinar in a couple of years, we will be in a different scenario in which all of those companies will have a very, very strong control because they are on the business field, because they will collect a lot of data. They will work with the big data and all the new ways of money, the new blockchain, cryptocurrencies are changing. How can you catch them? How can you put your hands on the assets? It's difficult if you don't have the key code or you don't know the people who is keeping that virtual money. So I think that what is happening, nobody realizes really what is happening now. At the same time, we are having this webinar, we're sharing these presentations. All the field is changing because the speed of the technology, the speed of the new way of doing contracts, the smart contracts are working by themselves. The DAOs companies are moving forward by themselves. And who is going to control? How can you stop it? How can you understand? Do you have the adaptation speed to follow them? I don't know. I'm not sure about it.
Thanks, Daniel. That's excellent. I think we will have to do a follow-on webinar to discuss some of these more in depth, maybe later this year. Andrew, can I ask you a question about gaming? How do you see this? And this question came in as well last week from one of our registrants. What is, or how is blockchain and digital currency being used to change the gaming industry? What are some of the practical applications that you've seen? And I'm happy to follow on as well, but you can talk for a minute about what you see in terms of gaming. I know there's a lot of news coming out of China. I don't know specifically about Taiwan, but I know that game, for the generation that I'm a part of, and perhaps you're a part of, gaming is it's kind of a way of life. It's a form of entertainment, and for some companies and some people, it's a real form of employment, right? There are
Sure.
people that are making money on this. So can you comment a little bit on what you're seeing from the gaming aspect?
Yeah, so I think you see a lot of the younger generation obviously playing a lot of games, video games, but obviously it's not just limited to younger generation. You see, older people, our age that enjoy playing games too in their free times. So you see that this industry is becoming such a huge industry from a corporate perspective in terms of companies building games, people buying games, but also assets within the games. People who want to buy, upgraded tools or weapons or, kind of accessories within their games to better, accelerate themselves in their, gaming experience or whatever score that they're trying to build in the game. So what you see right now with a lot of the NFTs, for example, you see the kind of the media portraying them as JPEGs or kind of pictures, or I can just like right-click save as. But you see a lot of these well-known NFT projects such as Bored Ape Yacht Club, Yuga Labs, pivoting from their success using NFTs to start developing games in the metaverse. So for BAYC, you see that their new game or kind of metaverse that they're starting up called The Other Side is basically them, in my belief, trying to pivot into the space that is being occupied with companies, public companies right now, for example, like Roblox or Unity, And you see, Meta kind of trying to get into this space as well. So I think this is the evolution that is taking place with Web3 and NFTs, where they're going to take these NFTs and start using them as a way to buy assets as NFTs, to trade these assets as NFTs, and use tokens or coins within that game or metaverse to purchase, basically barter for accessories or NFTs or things like this. So I mean, the possibilities are huge, and the revenue opportunities are huge for these companies. And people love these games and want to participate, and what better to have things that you can trade, upgrade, and participate like that. So I see Web3 being a huge contributor to this gaming industry.
That's great. Thanks so much for your perspective on that. I think maybe for our last question, because we're already a little bit over time, thanks everyone for sticking around. Last question, and I'll go first, is what kinds of resources are you using to stay connected? What groups are you a part of? Where can people go online to learn more about this, whether it's blockchain or AI or anything else you're interested in? So for me, I'm an older guy, so I'm not on Instagram, and I'm not really on Facebook much anymore, but I am on LinkedIn. And so a lot of my resources, I blog about Web3, I speak on Web3, and I try to put all my content up on LinkedIn. So if any of you are interested and you're not connected with me, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to be a resource, even if you just have questions you want to share. But there's some great groups on LinkedIn, whether you're interested in the NFT aspect of blockchain, whether you're interested in the development side or legal side. I run a small legal group that's been growing. It's called Web3 Law on LinkedIn. I think we have 100 members now. And so it's still growing, and I'm a member of other groups too. And I find that a lot of if you've ever spent any time on Discord, you know that it's a horrible place to try and get anything done. At least that's my experience on Discord so far. LinkedIn, it gets out a lot of the noise, and so I find that it's a good place. There are others. I try to find good people on Twitter, or there's some reporters that are doing really great jobs. I think my favorite resource right now is Axios. Axios puts out a daily blog or a daily newsletter on Web3, and I found that to be the most useful, reliable, really good and kind of approachable format. It's only about, I think I read 5 minutes every day, so it's a short newsletter, but they're very good at going deep and giving highlights on major trends in the industry, and it's been extremely helpful to me, as well as finding some good YouTube people who know what's going on and who are very good in their industry. So those are the resources that I use. Of course, I'm looking at what the SEC is doing, kind of current enforcement actions, how crypto companies get into trouble with the SEC, and then what kind of penalties there are. And so I'm following that as well. So those are my resources. Maybe let's go back over to Roic and Andrew first, and then Daniel, you can close out with any resources you suggest for people to follow in terms of what's going on in the AI world.
Yeah, I think for us, actually, like you mentioned, Jonathan, Twitter is a good resource for a lot of this information. And actually, to me, I think Discord is actually a very good resource for Web3, blockchain, crypto, basically because all of these communities, these projects, these NFT communities, they're all on Discord. So that's where they, start their projects. That's where they discuss. That's where they, have kind of voting systems, approvals, things like that. So a lot of these communities have actually used the Discord platform to develop their projects. And then another one would be Telegram. A lot of these projects also use Telegram, but Telegram is more like a chat, like a WhatsApp or things like that. So the kind of conversation just goes in one stream without any separation of topics and things like that, like a Discord. So those would be, kind of major sources that I would view for Web3 and blockchain. Of course, for legal updates, then Obviously, like you mentioned, Jonathan, to view, to follow, the SEC. They've obviously been coming out with a lot of cases in recent weeks, and obviously the big one that's still pending with Ripple and all that.
One more ad is Medium. If you want to look into something more hardcore, more scholarship-wise, I think Medium provides a very good references.
Here in Argentina, we usually don't have that kind of resources. Basically, we're moving with the Twitter, Instagram, and the classic and traditional social media platforms or networks. And even though we remember that we have a lot of limitations in terms of subscriptions to different companies outside the country, because we have control by the central bank over the foreign currency. So it's difficult. It's not easy for us to hire different platforms or services from overseas. But we use the WhatsApp and those professional networks. But it's not common within the lawyers' fields to have more resources than the newsletters you receive from different institutions of the world by email, or if you belong to a chat group or a WhatsApp group.
Excellent. I want to thank all of our my co-panelists here, Andrew, Rook, and Danielle. Absolutely wonderful to have you here. Thanks for being flexible on the time, and appreciate all of you for attending. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, maybe.
Appreciate that.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.